I can't say exactly when this feeling started. Like someone is watching you even in the most mundane moments. Not from around the corner, not from the ceiling. From somewhere inside. From inside your thoughts. From inside your heart. It was as if the silence itself had begun to listen. My name is Margaret Sinclair. I'm 52 years old. Until recently, I led a very ordinary life. Work, worries, shopping trips, TV in the evenings, news without meaning, coffee without taste. I wasn't a bad person. But to be honest, I wasn't a good one either. I just was. I didn't think about dying. No more than everyone else does. Of course, I was afraid of old age, illness, and loneliness. But death? No. It was too far away to be disturbing. Like a cold call from out of town that you're not going to answer anyway. My life is a series of small decisions, minor compromises. There were no tragedies, no great deeds. Just a smooth glide with the flow. And maybe that's why when death came, it wasn't like an explosion. It was like a crack in glass. Barely noticeable at first. Then ominous. And then everything. It happened on November 14th. A normal day. In the morning wake-up coffee, an old sweater with pellets. The day went on as usual, without expectations, without revelations. I was on my way home from work. Shoulder bag, phone in hand. Crossing the road. Green light. And everything. White noise. I didn't see the car. I didn't hear the screech of brakes. Only a strange metallic thud, like a bell being struck through the air. And suddenly nothing. No pain. No blood, no commotion. Just an absence. But the strangest thing I felt was that I was still here. The first moments after impact? Death? They were like a dream where you realize you're dreaming. I looked down at the road, but I couldn't see myself. I saw other slow-motion silhouettes, frightened faces, people running. Their screams were silent, like I was watching a movie with the sound turned off. And I still felt it. Not pain, not cold, but something else. A deep, fundamental feeling. Something is broken. I didn't know where I was. The space around me was gray, not in the sense of color, but in the sense of feeling. Like an old photograph, tarnished by time. No sharp shapes. Everything is soft, as if blurred by tears. And in this space, I am. Or what's left of me. I couldn't feel my legs, but I knew I was moving. I couldn't feel my breath, but I knew I was alive. A strange, transparent existence, filled with a question I couldn't articulate. And then him. I do not know how long I was in that strange gray corridor, but at some point it began to change. Not visually, but internally. The space became denser, as if the air had become viscous. I felt heavy in my mind. It was as if every emotion weighed more. I thought of my mother. Then the man I once loved. Then the words spoken in anger. Insults I haven't forgiven. And they weren't memories. They were living things next to me. They were breathing. And then, for the first time, I was afraid. Because I realized I wasn't alone anymore. Someone or something was nearby. I couldn't see the face. Just a shape cut out of light and darkness at the same time. The figure didn't speak. But its every presence sounded inside me like an organ in an empty cathedral. I'm not sure why I said that. But I said, "Oh my God." Silence. Then the voice. It didn't come from him. It came from space itself. "I can hear you." Not "I'm here." Not "I am God." "I can hear you." It was scarier than if he said he was going to judge me. Because it meant everything I'd ever thought, felt, done, heard. There was no silence. Never. I didn't know who it was. But inside she knew. It was Christ. But not the same Jesus I saw in paintings or in churches. Not a sad prophet. It was Christ not as a consolation, but as a mirror. It's cold. The exact. Merciless in its clarity. He wasn't judging. He was showing me. Suddenly, the space around us disappeared. Instead of it, paintings. Myriad images pop up from the void. Like memory slides, only sharper than reality. Every moment of my life is in the smallest detail. I saw how I said to a child in the supermarket, "Get out of the way, you're in the way." How I didn't say anything when my friend was crying. How I crossed the street when I saw a homeless man. Thousands of such moments. Not crimes. Not atrocities. But indifference. And I felt these moments weighed more than they seem. It was as if every little whatever was a brick in the wall separating me from something great. From the light. From love. He didn't explain. He let me feel it. It was only when I started to cry, not with my eyes, but with my soul, that he said, "I'm sorry. There is one sin, Margaret. One that doesn't get forgiven is not because I don't want to forgive, but because people don't want to acknowledge it." I shivered. "Which one?" I gasped. He didn't answer right away. Just turned around. Or rather, reality turned and I saw. What we don't notice doesn't cease to exist. It's just waiting for us to come to our senses. From Laura's diary. I wasn't walking, I was sliding. Or maybe I was being carried along like water in a black river. Everything was like a mirror covered in ash, as if reality itself refused to fully reflect the truth. This world was not a nightmare, not a hallucination, not something made up. It was real. Cruel in its metaphysical clarity. Jesus, if I can call him that, for my perception still struggled with logic, walked beside me. Or rather, it existed nearby. You didn't need to see it with your eyes. I could feel it like a thunderstorm approaching, like a flash of awareness in the silence. His presence is not warmth, not light, but awakening. Uncomfortable, restless but true. We found ourselves in what looked like a giant waiting room, with no benches, no windows, no doors. Just silhouettes. They stood silent, swaying slightly as if under the pressure of their own breath. Their faces were pale and silent, but in each of them I recognized myself. Not literally. Emotionally. Each silhouette was a variation of the indifference I'd once succumbed to. He led me forward. "You think sin is an act," he said at last. "But often a sin is omission spiced with justification." We stopped. Here is a woman. Her clothes are riddled with holes like time. On his lap is a boy. His eyes are wide with fear, but the woman looks away. No pity. No pain. Only indifference. And I knew it was me. More precisely, not me personally, but an opportunity that I didn't take advantage of. An opportunity to comfort, to say, to do something. And I didn't. Not because I'm angry. Because I'm busy. Because not on time. Because life. Jesus did not condemn. He showed me. And then the next scene. I see a man falling in the street. The crowd passes by. Someone laughs. Someone quickens their pace. I remember, I was there too. I'm one of those people who walked by with headphones in my ears, thinking that someone else would definitely help. Jesus says again, hell doesn't start after death. It starts when people refuse to participate. We went even further, and now the space has become a kind of archive. Scenes of life. Thousands. Millions. Each one needed someone. In each one, someone turned away. And among them, I recognized myself, even in those moments that didn't seem to matter. When I didn't call back. When I didn't ask, "How are you?" When I didn't notice someone else's pain, because I was too busy with my own. I started to cry. Not from terror. From understanding. And all this is a sin. He nodded. It's the only sin that comes without a fight. He's polite. Convenient. It disguises itself as tiredness, busyness, and reasonableness. He is always intelligent. And always empty. The words hit me like fire, but they didn't burn me. They cleaned up. For the first time in years, I felt like I was seeing myself, others, the very fabric of the world. And the fabric was torn by millions of tiny holes. Why are you showing me this? Because you can still choose. Because the ones you see next can't. Suddenly, the ground beneath me caved in. Or maybe I've stopped being connected to her myself. The space turned into a chasm, and I flew down. But not in the fall, but in the dive. It was as if she were entering the very heart of the world, and its shadow at the same time. It was getting darker. It was getting muffled. "What is it?" I asked, almost in a whisper. "It is a place where indifference has become an eternity," he said. "You called it hell." The fall had no end. It wasn't vertical. Rather, it was a slow, viscous slide through the fabric of time itself. There were no walls, no stars, not even color. Everything was made up of that gray darkness that fills the mind in moments of despair. It didn't hurt. It was inevitable. I was falling in the absence of everything. And the longer this fall lasted, the clearer it became. There would be no land here. There is no final point where you can get back on your feet and understand that you came. This place had no endings. Just the beginning. Infinite, twisted beginnings. When the space finally solidified into shape, I found myself on a sort of street. Although it's hard to call it a street. Everything seemed to be created from memories, but not human, as if someone was trying to recreate our world from the description of a person who himself was never alive. The houses were tall, but without windows. The staircases led up to the sky, but ended in a dead end. There were no streetlights on, but there was an inner glow that illuminated everything. The silence here wasn't silence. It was full. The sound of breathing, the echo of footsteps, barely discernible phrases, and it all sounded like it was behind a wall. Like the rustle of thoughts before going to bed. And one voice stood out. If only. This phrase sounded with different intonation, in different languages, at different ages. Sometimes it sounded like a child's whisper, sometimes like a death rattle. And I knew it was regret. Petrified regret. Alive, throbbing, and completely useless. I began to see those who said it. People were everywhere, but no one noticed each other. One man held the phone endlessly to his ear. A woman was trying to push a cart that got stuck in the asphalt. The old man tried again and again to light a cigarette that didn't exist. Their movements were looped like rituals. Everyone was trapped in a single action that they died with. But these actions were not crimes. No, these were small things. I felt they're not here because they've killed or stolen. They're here because they didn't stop. They didn't look at it. They didn't ask. And then I was alone again. The space parted, and a creature came to me. Without a form. Without an image. It had no body, but it had weight. It was as if his presence shifted the very fabric of reality. I felt naked, but not in the physical sense. My soul, my thoughts, my fears were exposed. The creature didn't speak. It was a question. Why didn't you stop then? I didn't know what then I was talking about. There were too many of them. I fell to my knees. Not from guilt. From understanding. Because this question is not a reproach. In this question, the truth. The answer was always in me. I just never wanted to hear it. At that moment, a light shone from inside. Not blinding, but deep, like warmth after a long cold spell. It came from Jesus. He was standing right next to me. And there was no anger in his eyes. Only sympathy. You haven't seen everything yet, he said. And before I tell you about the sin that drives souls into this ice stone, you must understand what it feeds on. He touched my forehead. And the world fell apart to reassemble me. And the world fell apart to reassemble me. When his finger touched my forehead, there was no light, only sound. Not a voice but a pulse. Pulse of humanity. I could hear the hearts of millions of souls beating at once. Some have a fast, panicked rhythm. In others, it is barely audible, almost fading. But they all had one thing in common: loneliness. This was the basic rhythm of hell, the pulse of abandonment. I found myself at a crossroads. But the roads led nowhere. Their lines were scratched by millions of footprints. People walked along them forever, hoping that one day the route would change. But it didn't change. It was a place of hope turned to torture. And then Jesus said, "They don't see that there are no intersections here. They think they can still choose. But the choice has already been made. The moment they decided not to look, not at themselves, not at others. They didn't commit any crimes. They have committed oblivion." Oblivion? I whispered. Yes. The only sin that leads here is not murder, not lying, not betraying. This is a refusal to see. Refusal to feel presence. This is indifference made a habit. At that moment, I saw a woman. She was beautiful, well-groomed, with expensive makeup and a bag in her hands. She was sitting at a cafe table, tapping her finger endlessly on her phone screen. In front of her sat a girl, her daughter. But she didn't notice it. I didn't hear it. The girl cried and called. My mother kept flipping through the pages. Again. And again. I recognized myself. Not literally, but symbolically. I recognized the years when I didn't hear. When she herself did not notice dying nearby, suffering, asking for a look. Not money. Not help. The view. Indifference is not a lack of feelings. This is their murder, committed every day. Jesus said. Then he led me on. We walked past buildings made up of human faces. The walls were crying. The windows screamed. These were the memories of the forgotten. Each brick was someone's unheard story. An old man dying alone. A boy who survived abuse and didn't tell anyone. A woman who had been silent for years because her words weren't considered important. Every forgotten face was printed here. I could feel each of them turning to look at me. They didn't accuse me. They called. In silence. Jesus stopped at the statue. It depicted a blind man with a mirror for eyes. He said, "Here is an image of those who do not see, but are sure that they are looking. This is a portrait of a modern sinner. He thinks he knows what he sees, what he feels, but it only sees a reflection of itself. And sin is not only evil. This is a denial of authenticity." I started to cry. The tears didn't come from fear, but from awareness. My little decisions, my not now, my it's none of my business, all came alive. All this has built walls here, paved roads, created pain. Not someone else. Jesus was silent. He knew that everything that needed to be said had already been said. The truth never comes like thunder. It comes as a pause. Like the moment when you hear yourself for the first time. Then he said, "Do you want to know the name of the sin that stabs souls into these lands every hour?" I nodded. He came closer. Indifference. And then the walls groaned. The faces screamed. Space shuddered. Because the truth spoken aloud sounds like judgment. They didn't ask to be saved, because they didn't even know they were drowning. They didn't scream because they didn't feel any pain. It was a self-imposed hell built out of the daily choice to turn away. I closed my eyes. A feeling like terror, but deeper, surged through me. It was a regret stripped of excuses. It burned. "But if you see it now," said Jesus, "then you are not lost yet." I asked, "Why are you showing this to me?" He replied, "Because you asked." I heard it. Many people see it. Units ask. He touched my chest. And I felt not just one pulse inside me, but many. It's like I'm connected to everyone I haven't heard before. I didn't see it. I didn't like it. You can go back. But knowledge is pain. And if you take it with you, you won't be able to live the same life as before. I whispered, "Let it hurt. The main thing is that it's alive." And then everything was gone. I do not know how much time I spent in the other world. There was no clock. There was no sun. There was not even time in the sense that we are used to, neither earlier nor later, only the eternal now. But in this now, Jesus, he called himself simply and calmly, without titles or pathos, led me through something more than a revelation. We talked. Or rather, I could feel his thoughts pouring meaning into the very core of my mind. He showed me not pictures, but feelings, states of souls. There were no flames or screams in hell. Hell was a twisted truth, and an eternal reflection of a choice made without love. A sin that leads to destruction, every hour. He didn't say it loudly. But in this silence, his words carried like an echo on the level of the soul itself. It's not murder. Not theft. Not blasphemy. It's a refusal to forgive. And then I saw her, a woman in a white lab coat, with a dead face. She was holding a picture of a baby in her arms. Her own son. He was murdered. Her heart couldn't forgive. She carried her rage like a shrine. She worshipped her pain. And when her life ended, she remained in the same state, in a funnel of bitterness, an inability to let go, an inability to give to God what is humanly impossible to resolve. Every hour, people come here who haven't been able to let go. Every hour. No exceptions. And suddenly I realized that I was almost one of them myself. There was a woman. My sister. She betrayed me once years ago. The situation is banal inheritance. Money, lies. I forgave her. That's what I thought. But deep inside, there was a small black spark. "I'll never forget this for you," I said to myself, Every time I remembered. That was my sin. He was like dust under a carpet. Inconspicuous. Insignificant. But here in this light, you can't hide it. It pulsed in my soul like a poisonous glow. Forgiveness is not an act of weakness. This is the door. Only the one who opens it can go outside. The rest remain forever. And then Jesus gave me a choice. Not words, not orders. Choice. Let go. I don't remember crying. But it felt like a release, like something I'd worn for decades had come out of me. I said, I forgive her. But not with my lips. I said it in every cell. And not to her, to herself. I was a prisoner myself, not her. And then the lights started to go out. It wasn't a big deal. It was like going home. But not immediately. Just before he left, he said, come back. Tell. But don't preach. Don't prove it. Just tell the truth to those who are willing to hear. I woke up in the hospital. Tubes. Cars. Heart rate on the monitor. My daughter's crying at the head of the bed. The doctors couldn't explain how I survived. Clinical death in almost 20 minutes, they said. But the brain wasn't damaged. It's impossible. I didn't try to argue. I had no proof. I only had a story. I didn't know where to start. I didn't start right away. I was listening. Looked. I prayed. A year has passed. I was learning to live again. But not the same as before. Everything was different. Every look, every word is a reminder that each of us carries our own eternity. We are already living either in hell or in forgiveness. There is no other option. Now I'm telling my story, not to shock you, and to remind you. Hell is not beyond. It's in us. But the way out is also inside. You who are listening now, think about it. Who are you keeping inside? Who can't you forgive? Even if you're right. Even if it's not fair. But you're holding on, and you can't go any further. Stop. Sorry. Not for them. For my own sake. For the sake of your soul. If this story has touched your heart, subscribe to the channel. Not for the numbers. For the sake of bringing light. Because every story is a spark. And from sparks, a flame is born. A flame that can light up even the darkest corners. See you. You're not alone.